Girl, do your research. Shoot. Every villain is the hero of their own story, my friends. There's just such there's such. Try this again. They're not all dark and messed up. There's some genuine love books in there. As I was saying before the horns. P.S. It's 11/11. It's always good news. And he's happy to have his pieces had. Oliver Blackwood. This is my version of love. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse and welcome to another round of some book recommendations. So I feel like February, everybody just goes bonkers for love stories and romance. There's all these romancy things. And if you guys follow me, you know I am not a huge romance reader, which is not to say I don't enjoy a bit of romance in my books, but I definitely like them with a little bit of darkness, a little bit of weightiness, a little bit of messed up stuff going on. So this is my version of some romance read recommendations. So they're not all completely dark and twisted, but they're all completely me. So I feel like there's something in each one of these books, obviously, that I loved and that just reflects something that I love. And again, I'm gonna fiddle with my earring today. So anyway, let's just dive into my version of this is how I do my Valentine's Day romances. And hopefully you guys can find a recommendation or two within this stack of books. So the first book I want to talk about is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And I don't know if I read this or if I heard it like on a podcast or something, but I heard somebody say that Emily Henry is romance for people who don't read romance. And I have no problem saying that I enjoy romance in a book, so it has nothing to do with that. It's just not what I gravitate towards anymore. And there are elements of all of these books where, again, I feel like it's not just a straight up romance novel. There's other things going on in it. And I think that's what I very much enjoy about it. But yes, I am definitely a fan of Emily Henry. I also loved Beach Read, and I just absolutely loved this book. So part of what I love about this book, and also I feel like part of what Beach Read appealed to me, is you have writers, you have people within the writing industry in these books, which is something I just absolutely love. And in this one, we have two sisters who wind up leaving New York City for a month. And they go to this small town called Sunshine Falls in North Carolina. And they just have sort of this small town Hallmark movie type of summer is the intent of it. So our main character, Nora, is just like a no-holds-barred New York City agent, and she is she's raised her younger sister after their mom passed away. She's been very protective of her younger sister, who is married. She has a few kids. She is pregnant right now, and Nora is one of these people who is just a workaholic. Everything revolves, like her entire life revolves around her job and revolves around her taking care of her sister. So her younger sister, Libby, Libby, wants to do this sort of last hurrah girls trip before she has her next child. And she thinks Nora could really benefit from getting out of New York City and coming to this small town. And she's pushing her to have this perfect romance. So the town that they go to, Sunshine Falls, is actually the setting of a book that Nora had worked on with one of her writers, and it all just sort of comes together. And then Nora, of course, runs into her nemesis from the city, Charlie Lastra, who also happens to be in Sunshine Falls for his own reasons. And you just get this great sister relationship story, which I very much enjoyed. You get this great banter and connection between these enemies with Nora and Charlie, and you just get all this great small town vibe. So if you watch any of those Hallmark romancy kind of Hallmark movies, I feel like Emily Henry just leans so well into all the tropes and expectations of those books and puts her own twist on it. There's so much humor to this book. There is some lovely steam to this book. And I just thought it was so wonderful. So I did a mix of the audiobook and the physical book. And of course, I don't have my phone with me to tell you the audiobook. It was Julia Whelan and wait for it. Hold on, please. Hold. And it was Julia Whelan, period. I was mixing it up with a different book that I read where there were two POVs. So Julia Whelan, All Hail the Queen of audiobook. And I just absolutely loved it. So again, you get some romance in this book. You get some very kind of those, like I say, cute Hallmarky moments, but there's also some weightiness to this. The loss of their mother is something that plays a big part in it. So you do still get the grief, you get the protectiveness of the older sister. And there's a lot of different things going on with the different characters in this book. So I really feel like she does an amazing job in weaving everything together, and I was completely hooked. So, romance, not dark and messed up. The second book I want to talk about is one I have mentioned before, and I keep saying I'm going to reread it, and I haven't done it, and I need to do it. And it's Lucy Sullivan is Getting Married by Marian Keyes. I'm sorry, this is like a blown out cover. It's a very pale pink. And this came out a very, very long time ago. So this was the first Marian Keyes book that I read, and it made me fall in love with her as an author. This was 1997 is when this was first published. So it first came out in the UK, and then I want to say maybe it was like 2 years later it came out in the US, doesn't matter. But I absolutely loved this book. So to me, this was like classic, like the era of Bridget Jones's Diary. I was devouring, this is like around the time when I discovered Lisa Jewell. I think her first book came out like 2001. But anything about women in their 20s trying to work, trying to romance, trying to friend, trying to pay the rent. I was all over any book in that universe. And this book completely just like had my entire heart. And like I said, made me fall in love with Marian Keyes. So when this book opens, Lucy is dragged by her friends to visit a psychic. And she thinks it's all going to be a bit of a laugh. And she doesn't believe 1 second of the prediction that it's going to come true. And the prediction is that she is going to be married within a year. Hence the title of the book. So, in fact, Lucy doesn't even have a boyfriend. But when she meets gorgeous but unreliable Gus and the handsome Chuck, and oh, there's Daniel, the world's biggest flirt, and even cute Jed, the new guy at work, is it written in the stars, or will Lucy finally take control of her own destiny and find the perfect man? So there is so much to this in terms of, yes, the love story, yes, the like just perfect psychic prediction about her getting married. I also feel like this was around the time that my friends and I kind of went through like a series of going to see this psychic when we were in Boston. I don't know, I feel like it all just connects in some way in my memories. But we have Lucy and all of her friends. I related to so much of this book, and I just loved it so much. But there are sort of all of those things. So there's the romance and Lucy trying to find herself and to try and, you know, weed between all of these gentlemen in her circle, but also the complications with her friends and working. And she's got some family complications. And there are elements of love and of grief and of pain and of trying to figure out who you are, and to try and figure out, you know, what love means and those expectations of falling in love with someone and sort of what you deserve versus, you know, how you're being treated and all of these different kinds of things. So it's very lighthearted in so many ways, but what Marian Keyes does so well, and one of the things I love about her, is the way she can weave in all of these different elements to the book. So you still get this great lighthearted, her humor is so perfect, you guys. I don't know why I said it in such a weird way, but you get this great lighthearted humor, but you also get, again, I just always call it the weightiness in the book, but not in like a heavy drag you down kind of a way, but in a very realistic way that everybody has baggage, everybody has stuff in their past, everyone has things that are weighing on them, and it all comes together, and there's just such reality and humanness to this and relatability to this, and I just loved it so much. And I'm like, I need to reread this book. I also need to read again Rachel, which is on my 23 of 2023, which is her sequel to Rachel's Holiday. But I just love Marian Keyes so much. And again, like I fell in love with her when I read her when I was younger and in my 20s, and I can still find such connection to her books now when I read them, even though I am not in my 20s, but I just think there's such great humor and such great writing, and I just love it so much. So I have 3 versions of this book, kind of accidentally. So I have my original one. When I went to London many, many years ago, I specifically went to Waterstones so I could buy the UK edition of this. And it's one of my favorite books of all time. So I definitely need to reread it and show it some love. And if you haven't read it, maybe you want to show it some love too. The next book was one of my favorites of 2022, and it totally took me by surprise, and it's Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. So this is the first book in what I think is going to be at least a trilogy. So book number 2, Husband Material, came out last year, and this came out in 2020, wait for it, 2020, period. So I just read it last year. I did the audiobook of this as well. Girl, do your research. Shoot. P.S. It's 11:11. It's always good news. Okay, this was read by Joe Jameson. So this is an enemy to lovers, which is one of my favorite tropes. I love it very, very much. If I had to pick a romance trope, I feel like that might be one of my favorites. I feel like it's kind of my favorite. So in this one, we are following Luke and Oliver. So Luke O'Donnell is tangentially and reluctantly famous. So he is the son of two rock star parents. His parents split when he was very young, and his father, who he's never met, spent the next 20 years cruising in and out of rehab. And now his dad is trying to make a comeback, which is putting Luke in the public eye. And Luke has kind of been caught in some compromising positions, and he works for a nonprofit and needs to clean up his reputation. So one of the ways he thinks that he can clean up his reputation is by sort of having the perfect boyfriend by his side. So a mutual friend of his connects him with Oliver Blackwood, who is a barrister and is as nice and normal as they come. So the mutual friend thinks it's going to be perfect to set them up together. Oliver's got some stuff going on where he could benefit from having a fake boyfriend by his side as well. And even though they have met before and didn't quite get on the first time around, they agree to fake date for both of their benefits. Hence the fake dating trope. And I just absolutely fell in love with both of these characters. The entire friend group in this is definitely one of my favorite friend groups in a book series. And I laughed so hard. The audiobook of this is absolutely tremendous. This is one of those books where I had started it. I got the audiobook from my library. I then just promptly purchased the physical book so I could have it and I could dog ear it. There's so many great lines in this. The dry humor is so on point. Luke is so deliciously inappropriate, which I absolutely love. His mom is one of my favorite characters, I feel like, of all time. She's just so wonderful. And there's just such like silliness and warmth and humor to this. But again, there's also weightiness with Luke and his relationship with his father. There are issues of addiction. There are issues around sort of the expectations for both of them, for Luke and for Oliver, of who you are and who your family is and what people expect of you and how people expect you to behave and how people, like what they expect your life to be, and living with those expectations and how you respond to them. And I think there's just so much just like love and warmth between the friends. And again, like Luke's mom, she's just the best, and she's so flippin' funny. And I just think there's just such great vulnerability to these characters, and they get each other in a way that, of course, like in an enemies to lovers trope, like they shouldn't, but of course they wind up just being perfect for each other, but not without its challenges and its struggles and its roadblocks. And I just loved it absolutely so much. So I definitely enjoyed Husband Material as well, which focuses on a kind of 4 weddings and a funeral setup. So you get lots of different romances. I enjoyed it. This was definitely 5 stars for me. And you should always start a series like this with the first book. So if you're looking to like simultaneously like laugh till you cry, but also maybe like cry a little bit because there's just some heartwarming moments in it, I highly recommend this book. And again, the audiobook is spectacular, but I loved it so much. I loved it so much. And I'm very excited for the 3rd book when it comes out. I will be reading it for sure. The next book I have is a thriller, and I didn't know that there was romance in this. And again, when it comes to my thrillers, I don't need romance and I don't actively search it out, but sometimes it works so well that I can't imagine the book without it. So this is Shiver by Ali Reynolds. This is a book I have talked about so many times here because I'm just that obsessed with it. And if you are in my neck of the woods, this is a great book to read right now because it is snowy, it is atmospheric, it is the perfect season. By the by, when I woke up this morning in New York, it was a -13 real feel. Like we are in it right now. It's only gonna last for like 48 hours, but I feel like what a perfect time to read a snowy book, even though I realize you guys are going to see this well after the fact, but who knows? Who knows what the weather is going to be like? So this is her homage to And Then There Were None. It was 1000% what inspired this book. And we get a group of snowboarders. So they were Olympic hopefuls. They met at this kind of Olympic training, if you will, 10 years ago, and they are reuniting now. So this takes place in the French Alps at this exclusive ski resort. So when they were all training together in the past, they were simultaneously like super competitive, but also great friends. And then one of the friends from the group winds up going missing sort of at the end of this training. And they are all brought back together again now, and then there were none premise, sort of under false pretenses. So they are all reunited at this mountain resort. And when they get there, they realize they are the only people there and that someone has brought them there for revenge, which is one of my favorite things. But we do get a past and present timeline. And in the past, we get this great, great romance. And I don't even want to tell you who it's between because you just need to figure it out when it happens. But I loved it. And I really thought it worked so well. And I think the chemistry between these characters, I think the bond between these characters was so wonderful. Ali Reynolds herself is a snowboarder. The authenticity she brings to the page, I feel like I have skied once in my life, my friends, and that was one time too many for me. Not my thing. Like just nope, not for me. And I have never been more fascinated by snowboarding before, what it feels like to put on your boots, to be on the board, to be flying down the mountain when your shoulder hits the ice, when your body hits the ice, the pain, the soreness that they feel, the intensity of the training, the athleticism of the sport. I was completely fascinated, which again, not something I was looking for in a book. And everything in this book just worked so perfectly. I just feel like all the pieces, like again, stars aligned kind of a situation. And I just loved everything about it. And I was so here for the romance in this book. And I loved it. I thought it was so well done. Low-key crushing on some of the characters in this book, and I think it's great. So this is how I like my romance, and I also enjoy the murder on top of the thriller. So if you're looking for a thrillery read with some romance in it, I think this is a great one. The next book I have is by one of my most favorite authors. You guys know Fool Me Once by Ashley Winstead. So the sequel to this book is coming out, or the companion novel, I should say, is coming out in May, I want to say. I will include all that information down below. So this is her romance debut. So In My Dreams I Hold a Knife was her thriller debut. This woman can do everything. She's like a quadruple threat, I feel. So this is her romance, and I absolutely loved it. So this is like a lovers to enemies to lovers kind of a romance. And in this one, we get Lee Stone. So she is the 21st century woman. This book is set in Texas. She is a communications director at a women-run electric car company. That's better than Tesla. Thank you very much. And after work, she is known as Stoner. So she parties, she drinks the guys under the table, and she has zero interest in love because of the guy who broke her heart back in grad school. And then we get to meet Ben Lederman. I need to make it just like a book crush video, you guys. So Ben is the guy who broke her heart in grad school, and he wound up leaving. He went to California. So 5 years later, Ben is back in Texas. He is working as a policy expert for the most liberal governor in Texas history, and Lee is trying to get a clean energy bill rolling. So things get complicated and competitive as they are forced to work together. So I realized that was like a lot of story. And it's interesting to me. So I've heard a lot of people say that this book is political, and yes, there is obviously some politicalness to it in the sense of that they are using Texas as the setting for this book, which is where Ashley Winstead lives, and trying to get sort of some liberal policies pushed through a not so liberal state. So I am not like someone who actively looks for books who have politics in them. The politics that are in this book to me were just like background story of why Lee and Ben are together and why they are working together and why they are up against a challenge, like trying to do a clean energy bill in Texas versus trying to do a clean like energy bill in California makes for two different stories. So it just sort of sets up a struggle that they are up against trying to get this pushed through. So it's like another roadblock for them. And I just absolutely loved Lee as a character. So again, she is this strong, successful, dynamic woman. She knows what she wants. She thinks she knows what she wants. And she is just going to go for it in so many different ways. And Ben is just everything and then some. I just absolutely adore him. I just love this man so much. And I love their dynamic together. And again, you get people that Lee works with. You have her sister in this book, who is the lead character in the companion novel, which comes out this year. And you get so many different storylines and so many different threads of what is going on, not in a negative way, but you have Lee dealing with her father's passing away. So again, you get this loss and this grief. And I feel like her having put up so many walls after things went south with her and Ben, you have the two of them kind of both simultaneously falling into old patterns with each other, but also having this thing that happened in grad school that broke them apart that they have to contend with. And then you just have such great humor to this in so many different ways. This is another one of those books where I got it from my library to begin with, started to listen to it. I've told this story so many times here that within like the first page of this book, I was walking down the street laughing out loud, and I 1000%, yep, it's still, I check it every time, but it's still there on the first page, and I will not read it out loud because you need to hear it yourself or read it yourself. But I literally was like, did she just say what I think she just said? And I rewound it and I was like, she totally just said that. I was crying. Listened to it on my entire walk, came home and like bought the book online. And I just absolutely love it. So there's such great humor to this. She pulls no punches. She has such great wit. And there's several moments in this book where I was crying from laughing so much. And I just love it so much. Like, I feel like if you know, you know. It's just so good. It's like the funny scene in Part of Your World with Abby Jimenez. Like, there's just such a great laugh out loud scene in that. It's not the same scene in this, but like that level of like, I was just laughing so much. So I thought it was great. I thought it was really well done. I loved how things were woven together. I loved the storyline with these characters. And again, it just felt like so much like pain and love and humanness and relatability in so many different ways. And I think there's just also an element of me that is just so impressed with that, what Ashley Winstead can do as an author, who can take us to the darkest, darkest places into something like The Last Housewife, and then put us here and give us such warmth and humor. And I loved it so much, you guys. If you can't tell, I feel like you can probably tell. I just love this book so much. I also feel like my hair is caught. So I would highly recommend reading this. I am very excited. I've already pre-ordered the next book and I can't wait to see what she does next. But I think it's great. And I think the humor and the love and the relationship in this completely just is amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. I dare you to read this and not fall in love with Ben Lederman. I dare you. I dare you. The next book I have takes us back to some thrillery stuff, but it's really rich ladies behaving so badly with My Summer Darlings by May Cobb. She can write a salacious, soapy, delicious, like steamy, murdery book that just begs to be devoured. And her books come out in the summer. They are also set in Texas. And I feel like she just gives us such great heat and atmosphere and just like bingeable summertime reads. It's like everything I wanted in a book. So this one reminds me of The Witches of Eastwick. And I believe in a later interview I saw with May Cobb, she talked about how that kind of inspired it in the way that we have three women who have been best friends since they were younger. They are in, I want to say like late 30s, early 40s when this book opens. So some of them are married, some of them are divorced, they have kids. They are all living in the same neighborhood where they grew up, and it's just like the best of friends. And then a mysterious stranger moves into town, and he moves into, you know, the house at the top of the hill, and his presence impacts and kind of blows apart all of their lives. So very Jack Nicholson, you know, coming in to Eastwick and what he does to Susan Sarandon and Michelle Pfeiffer and Cher. And I just absolutely loved this book. So there is romance in this book. It's a little bit dark and messy. There's definitely choices that are made. Not every decision is a good one that these ladies make, but it is so great in that you get the dynamic between these women, and again, you get this mysterious, beautiful stranger who comes into town, and everybody is just, you know, enthralled by him and into him and just wants a little piece of him. And he's happy to have his pieces had, so to speak. But what we also know on the first page of this book is someone is running through the woods and is terrified for their life. and someone is after someone. So we get to try and figure out the who's and the what's. So we go back 6 weeks, so it's not even that much time. So we go back in time 6 weeks and we meet Will Harding is our mysterious stranger as he comes into town and how he impacts these women's lives. So this is definitely, like I say, there is some steaminess to this book. There are choices are made. There are consequences to choices. Bad choices are made. These are ladies who like to drink, who like to hang out. And it's like I said, it's rich ladies behaving badly. We get their families. We get this neighborhood. It's this very small town where people, like I say, have lived their entire lives. You get a lot of the gossip mill. Her first book, The Hunting Wives, which is also, or her first, I shouldn't say, that's actually not her first book. Her first book that I read, The Hunting Wives, is definitely like a Desperate Housewives meets Real Housewives set in Texas with guns. It's these ladies go shooting and hunting. And I very much enjoyed that one as well. But I don't know, there's something about like the steamy salaciousness of this book that just wanted me to put it on this list. But I also highly recommend The Hunting Wives if you haven't read that one. And then she has a new book coming out this summer and I can't wait. It is so high up on my list. I'm so excited for it. Okay, we'll switch back to a little, I don't even want to say like levity, but not murdery. How about that? So this is Evie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes. This is her debut novel. I absolutely loved this book so much. I read it when it came out. This was in a Taylor Jenkins Reid newsletter recommendation. So I was like, done. I don't even know what this book's about, but I'm buying it. And I fell in love with it. So this is set in Maine. So in this book, we are following Evie, and it is a year after her husband was killed in a car crash. And it says, everyone in town, even her best friend Andy, thinks grief keeps her locked inside and Evie doesn't correct them. So Andy's best friend Dean is a former Major League Baseball player for the New York Yankees, and he has a terrible case of the yips, which basically he's so in his head he can't pitch and he can't perform, and he needs to get out of New York. So Andy thinks it'd be a brilliant idea for Dean to move into the house behind Evie's house and help him get away, and then kind of hopefully help Evie get a little bit out of the house by having this new friend of hers, and hoping that like they can kind of help each other through their issues, so to speak. But Evie's not interested in talking about her grief. Dean's not interested in talking about his yips. So it says, what starts as an unexpected friendship soon turns into something more, but in order to move forward, Evie and Dean will have to reckon with their pasts, the friendships they've damaged and the secrets they've kept. But in life, as in baseball, there's always a chance up until the last out. So did I love the fact that this was a baseball book? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Do you have to know anything about baseball to love this book? No, you don't. No, you don't. All you have to do is be completely interested in, invested in two people looking for a second chance. And again, it's this, I need to figure out how to articulate this better, but people who are at sort of this turning point in their life, at sort of this juncture where you're looking for change and you're not quite sure how to move forward. And I feel like it's, one of my friends had given me this analogy years ago when I was sort of in the midst of what I refer to as my dark days, which I can say with moderate humor right now. But she's like, you're kind of like in the middle of the stream, and you can go backwards and have things be how they were, which didn't work out well. Or you can fight against the tide, kind of fight against the water and push forward and get yourself out. Or you can stand still and basically like drown in it. None of these are great like suggestions except for the pushing forward, which is the hardest part. But I feel like these are two people who are in the middle of the stream, and they can drown in where they are, or they can retreat back to what was, even knowing that that doesn't end well for them. Or you can fight for something different and fight for what can be a better, happier life for yourself. And I just loved their dynamic. I loved the development of their friendship. I loved that they were both holding back in so many ways and both kind of stuffing away what was bothering them, sort of in this, if I ignored it, will go away kind of a way. And just, you know, finding solace in a place you never thought you were going to. And I loved the writing of this book, and I really enjoyed these characters. I loved the extended group of characters that are in this book. I spent a lot of time in Boston. I have certainly been to Maine a handful of times. I do have an affection for New England, and I just thought the setting was absolutely terrific. And I love the small town vibes of this, and I thought it was great. I just really, really loved this book. So I recently talked about how I read her second book, Flying Solo, which is set in the same small town. And you don't need to read one to understand the other or anything, but I do love books that are set in the same universe in a totally different way, but kind of like Hannah Morrissey's Black Harbor series. But I love these books. Again, there's such warmth and humor to these books, but there is also the weightiness of the grief. And, you know, I think for Dean, trying to reckon with, you know, can I get past this? Is that the end of my career? If I'm not a pitcher for the Yankees, who am I? Like, what do I do from here? And it's just, it's so good. It's so flippin' good. The next recommendation I have is actually two books because they definitely remind me of each other in a lot of ways. So it's Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren and then Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. So when I read Every Summer After, I instantly was reminded of Love in Other Words, which I absolutely loved. So let's pause and start this over again. Okay, so in both of these books, we get a relationship between two people who met when they were younger and then reunite when they are older. And somewhere in between, things went south for both of them. So in both of these books, our female main character, their families, have kind of summer houses, cabins, sort of a home away from home that they go to. And the boy that they fall in love with is the boy next door in both of these books. And we get to see in dual timelines in both of these books how our characters meet in the past, how their relationships develop from friendship into love, and then we see them reuniting when they are adults, trying to grapple with the what went wrong and confront sort of the past and all the things that went sideways. That's a word. So I read Love in Other Words first, and I absolutely loved this book. So again, if we're gonna try and, I feel like I should have done some sort of tally here about my book crushes. So in this one we have Elliot, and it is Macy's first and only love of her life. So they wind up having a chance reunion in the present day, and they have obviously both moved on with their lives. They broke up when they were teenagers, and it was the night that Elliot told Macy that he loved her, and that was the end of their relationship that night. And they have to grapple with what happened then, and they clearly are both not over what happened in the past. So we get to see the past and present timelines and how things are between them. I don't know how to talk about these books without giving stuff away. So the beauty of this book is Elliot and Macy are just obsessed with words and books, and they spend so much of their childhood together in her room reading books together. And their connection, and I think this is part of what I fell in love with them, is falling in love through books and through words. And it's such a sweet relationship because they're pretty young when they meet. I don't know if they're like 10 or 11, and you get to see sort of the innocent sweetness of their relationship, and then as they grow into teenagers and start to fall in love with each other, and then the complete complexity of the relationship as they are adults, trying to grapple with what happened. And I just absolutely loved it. So in a very similar way, in Every Summer After, we meet Percy, and her family had the cabin up by the lake. And when this book opens, it's been, I want to say 10 years since she has spoken to Sam and his brother Charlie. Sam was the boy that she fell in love with. And Percy winds up getting a call from Charlie that their mom has passed away, and their mom was a huge important person in Percy's life. So she returns to go to the funeral, and in the course of doing that, she of course has to be confronted by Sam and everything that happened. So we see the past and present timeline there as well. I think both of these books do a great job with emotions, with talking about grief, with talking about love, the innocence of that first love, and how they have both sets of people in both of the books have moved on in their lives and where they are now, and how they try to kind of like face the past and reconcile the past and kind of figure out, like, is there a future for us? And the books, again, are just so beautifully well done. They are not the same in any way other than sort of that through line that I talk about, which makes them great read-alikes, but I loved them both. Every Summer After definitely has a little bit of steam to it. I don't remember, that's a lie. Christine, there is a little bit of steam in this one too. Yes, you do get a little bit of steaminess in both of these books. But I truly loved both of these the characters in both of these books. And I just thought they were absolutely amazing. So highly recommend if you haven't read them, and if you've read one and maybe not the other, this could be a great read-alike for you. Another book that completely took me by surprise when I read it is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. So this was one of those books where, again, I felt like so many people were talking about it, and I read this a couple of years ago, and this was yet another book that I got from the library, and then while I was listening to it, I knew I needed to have it. I am trying to look at my phone to find out who the audiobook narrator is. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Okay, sorry, my first app did not have this. So this was narrated by Ramon de Ocampo, and he did an amazing job with this book. So I absolutely fell in love with this book. So this is another Enemies to Lovers. So this is a romance between the first son of the President of the United States, the first female President of the United States, by the by. So it is Alex Claremont Diaz, and he falls in love with Henry, who is the Prince of Wales. And they have had many kerfuffles in their day. But there is a little bit of, you know, some US-British relations that could use some good press, and their families have decided it would be great if Henry and Alex could do a lot of press and PR and just showing how everything is great and everything is wonderful between them. So they are forced together, and again, if you know it's an enemies to lovers trope, you know this story's gonna go. But I loved this. And again, I feel like I laughed very much in like a boyfriend material kind of a way. I laughed so hard when I was reading this book, but there's also so much depth of emotion in this, in terms of like the family love, in terms of their love for one another, an amazing group of friends and family around them as well, who I absolutely adore. And I just thought it was so like beautiful and timely. So this book was supposed to be Casey McQuiston's kind of parallel universe to the 2016 election of what happens when you have the first female president for the United States. And obviously that's not what happened. But this book came out in 2019, and it's sort of at the end of that term for our first female president in the book, and she is looking for re-election. So again, the importance of positive relations and things looking good and having good press and PR is very important. So we get so many different layers in this again. So like I said, you get the families, you have some political stuff going on here because she is the president. This is set in DC. You have him traveling over to England, and then you get just so much background on the family and the dynamics and growing up in that political family. And you see it from both Alex's side and also from Henry's side. And of course, I always want to call him Harry, as he's supposed to be the prince in England. But I really just enjoyed this book so much. And again, the humor was so on point. There's so many great things. I need to reread this book, and I need to just mark it up to the high heavens. I feel like I barely did it justice with these couple flags I have going on here. But I think if you are looking for, like I say, some great humor, there's definitely some weightiness to this. There's also just such tremendous love to this book. They are forced to keep their romance a secret, as you can imagine, and kind of grappling with that and how that impacts them, and sort of some hijinks that ensue in order to keep things secret. There is some steaminess to this book, and I just loved it so much. I absolutely loved these characters, and I think it's so well done and so well written. And I don't know if we're gonna get more of them. I don't know if there's supposed to be any kind of sequel or more to this. I know they are making a movie of it. I don't know if it's a movie or multi-part. I will fact check myself 10 ways and let you guys know down below, but I'm very excited to see this one come to the screen. It was a really loud horn. And I just think it's absolutely great. All the warm and fuzzies with some tears on the side and lots of humor. And it just was everything. It was everything. And like I said, it just blew me away because my expectations were unclear of how I was going to feel about this book, knowing that it was romance, and it just exceeded them and then some. And then we're going to wrap this baby up with my kind of romance, you guys. This is You by Carolynkempfness. I debated putting this on here, but I was like, you know what? Sometimes you just want a completely dark and messed up love story. And I am not ashamed to tell you guys that I love Joe Goldberg. Yes, he is a horrible human being in the grand scheme of things, but in his defense, it comes from what he thinks maybe is a good place. And I don't know how you can't not like Joe. You can't not like Joe. I feel like Joe articulates some things that maybe some of us think some days, maybe on our darker days, but I absolutely love this book. So this book is told in second person, which is genius / completely creepy, because it does feel like he's very much talking to you. So Joe works at a bookstore in New York City, and he meets this girl, Guinevere Beck, who goes by Beck, and she just comes in to buy a book, and he is just smitten with her. And oh, Beck. Sorry, sister. Because Joe becomes just obsessed with her. And as it says, he'd kill to have her. Beck doesn't know it yet, but she's perfect for him, and soon she can't resist her feelings for a guy who seems custom made for her. And we get an obsessive relationship that quickly spirals into a whirlwind of deadly consequences. So Joe is he's just like, he's horrible, but he's absolutely amazing. And this is one of those books that I think will definitely make you double check your social media, double check that your blinds are closed at night, or, you know, closed during the day sometimes. But this gives a whole new name to Stalker. And that first, so this has been turned into a series. So the first season of the series is pretty true to the book. Changes have been made, but holistically pretty true to the book. And there was this ad for it at the beginning, and Penn Badgley plays Joe Goldberg, and I think he's absolutely brilliant in this. And he has this line where it's like, the things you do for love. And again, Joe is acting from a place of what he thinks is right. Everyone is the hero. Every villain is the hero of their own story, my friends. And I'm a huge fan of Joe. So the adaptation definitely adds some characters and changes some things. The book is brilliant, you guys. You know. The book is always better. Read the book first and then have fun with the TV series. I have not yet watched seasons 2 and 3. I think it veers off. So book number 2 in this series is Hidden Bodies. Book number 3 is You Love Me, which I have to read. It's on my 23 of 2023. And then book 4 is coming out this year. So that was my knuckle cracking. But I just love Joe. This is definitely, it's the dark and messed up love story like no other. And I am just completely obsessed with it. I think Carolynkempfness does an outstanding job with this book. I think she elevates the creepy boyfriend. I think she does a great job of manipulating poor Beck. And I think it really makes you question any romantic relationship you might enter into. It really puts things in a completely different perspective, but I loved it. So I highly recommend it. You know, if it wasn't me, maybe we wouldn't end on such a dark note, but it's me. So we're going to end on a super dark note with you. So that's going to do it for my sometimes dark and messed up romances, sometimes straight up just love, love, love romance, but romance with a little bit of complications, because let's face it, life is complicated, relationships are complicated, and I like to see real life reflected in books and like to feel like I can relate to these characters, that there is an understanding there, that there are things that happen to them that have happened to me, that there are emotions I can relate to, and I just love seeing the complexity of the characters and the complexity of the situations. But it's all just great, delicious fun. So let me know what romance recommendations you guys would make, and if you have read any of these, but definitely other romances that may be kind of in this vein that you guys would recommend, because I'm always looking for something new. I just want to make sure that there's some weightiness or darkness to it. I mean, is that too much to ask? I don't think so. So there you go. This is my version of love. So until next time, thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone is doing fantastically, and I will see you guys very soon in another video. Take care, everybody. Bye.